looking at the bead frame. This will be a new material for the children. They have been using mostly the stamp game for operations, and we'll now be moving on to this material, which is actually more abstract than the stamp game, and I will show you how that's the case. So the stamp game is what's called a hierarchical material because it has the hierarchical colors, right? The red, blue, and green. Okay. So the bead frame is also a hierarchical material because it has the same colors, where the green shows the units, the blue shows tens, the red shows hundreds, and the green also shows units of the thousands family. So in order to, so this was more abstract certainly than the chains, right, or the golden beads, which is what they mostly use in primary. Stamp game is also used in primary, but you can see that these are certainly more abstract than the golden beads, because one stamp does represent one, but then we have a stamp of the same color, of a different color but the same size, that represents 10. Likewise with 100, the only thing that differentiates 100 from the units or the tens is the color, not the size, and likewise for 1,000. So this is the next level of abstraction. Now, we've moved on to the bead frame, so we no longer have stamps that we can actually touch and lay out. We are now going to be using these colored beads. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the bead frame. There's something I need to point out about the bead frame. The bead frame is not a material that all your children will use. There are some children that will go directly from the stamp game to abstracting the 4 basic operations without ever going to the bead frame. The bead frame is actually much quicker and easier to use. However, there are a fair amount of children, as there are a fair amount of adults, that struggle with the bead frame. For some people, it's just not necessarily intuitive, and it requires you to move beads in opposite directions, as you'll see in a little while, and it can be confusing. I have had many, many children that have never used the bead frame. They go directly from the stamp game to abstraction. However, it's a very, very useful material for those children that do love it. And I have to say, children and adults either love this material or really can't handle it. So for the children that love it, it is a wonderful material. It frees them from the stamps where they have to very tediously lay out all the stamps. Here, everything is organized on a wire for them, so they can quickly count and move using very large numbers, which is, again, more tiresome and burdensome in the stamp game. Okay, so just a couple of things about the bead frame. We have our units here on the top. We have our tens second, our hundreds, and then our units of the thousands. All right, and we also see that they're labeled up here, and we are seeing now a new color scheme that we have not seen before, and that is this white and gray, and we will see this in subsequent materials, which will add again an extra level of abstraction to the work. All I'm going to say right now is that the white is reserved for units, tens, and hundreds, and the gray is reserved for thousands. All right? We'll go further into this concept and use of this new color scheme when we get to subsequent materials. All right, the first lesson is reading and writing numbers on the bead frame. Okay, reading and writing numbers on the bead frame. And there is a special, this aside, there's a special paper that is used to record numbers on the bead frame. This paper has a dividing line right in the middle, so it's actually two working sections. You could do one problem here and then your next problem here. It has the units of thousands, it has hundreds, it has a comma in between the units and the hundreds, the 1,000 units and the hundreds, tens and units. And again here you've got unit of the thousands, you've got your comma, and you've got your hundreds, tens, and units. The way you write on this paper, you'll see in a little while, you actually write on the colored lines. You write the numbers actually on the colored lines. So let me show you an example of how to use this paper and what your first lesson will look like with the children when you introduce them to the bead frame. Just, how to write numbers, make numbers, and read numbers on the bead frame. That's the very first thing that you're going to teach them. And then we will move on to, once they've become very well versed in writing and reading numbers and making them on the bead frame, we will move on to the operations using the bead frame. Okay, so I am going to introduce the child first to the bead frame. Okay, so we have a new material here that you've never seen before. A new material that you haven't seen before. Now I know that you're very familiar with the stamp game. So I want to just take a moment here to show you the differences and the similarities between the bead frame and the stamp game. So when we use the stamps, we have our units, tens and hundreds, and we have our units of thousands. And we make our numbers according to how many units we need, how many tens we need, how many hundreds we need, and how many thousands we need. Well, any number that you can make with the stamps, we can also make with the bead frame. So in the bead frame, you can see right here, it has a little 1 right there. So these beads represent units. The next row represents tens, the next one hundreds, and the next one thousands, just like we do with the stamp game. And you notice, of course, that the hierarchical colors are there. All right, so now I'm going to show you how we make numbers and how we record them. Say I would like to make the number 256. Okay, so I am going to simply go ahead and say I need 6 units. I'm going to move the units from this side over to the other side. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units. Next, I need 5 tens. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tens. And next, I need 2 hundreds. 1 and 2. You will notice that every wire has a total of 10 beads. So if I'm going to take 6 units, I'm left with 4 units in the bank, right? That we could use later if we need to, because it's always a total of 10. So you know how I counted to 6, right? But once I start getting a little better with the bead frame, I can just say I know I need 6, which means 4 are going to be left behind. All right, and that makes it a little bit quicker. So once you get more familiar with the bead frame, that will become something that you do. Okay, so I have made 256. 256. All right, I would now like you to, I'm going to actually make a number. I'm not going to write it down. I'm going to clear the bead frame. I'm going to make a number, and you're going to tell me what it is. So, say it, but you are going to read it. Okay, so that's right. The number is 724. 724. So I could write that 724. Here we go. 724. Now, we have a special paper that we use with the bead frame. And I would like to show you that right now. I'm going to put my two numbers that I've looked at. And I'm going to put my paper here. Okay. And let's go ahead and start with 256. So my bead frame paper is simply, it's got two large columns. I could do one problem on this side, one problem on this side. And every column shows me units of thousands. That's this green line. Then I have a comma. And then we have hundreds, which is in red. We have tens, and we have units. And if I want to write the number 256, we actually write on the line itself. So I would write my 2 on the first line right over the 100. I write my 2 right over the 100 line on the first line. And I would write my 5 on the second, again on the first line, but in the blue. And I would write my 6 units right on the green line, to give me 256. Now I'm going to do the next number, 724. So I'm going to get my red pencil again. I'm going to go to the other side. I'm going to write 700 on the red line, 20 on the blue line, and 4 on the units. So I there have 724. Okay, so that is how you use the paper. Okay, what I would like you to do right now, so I've shown you how to make numbers on the bead frame, I've shown you how to read numbers on the bead frame, and how to write it on the paper, on the bead frame paper. So what I would like you to do is to practice these skills with a friend. I would like you to make numbers on the bead frame for your friend and have her read them. I would like to have you write the numbers on the paper, and I would also like to have, then you can switch, right? Your friend will make numbers on the bead frame for you to read, and she can write them on the paper.